So, are we ready to go? So we're very pleased to be here. I'll just wait for a short while before we begin, until the time has come, and hopefully I'll see a smile on the faces. I hope you can hear us through the headphones. Can you hear us? So there are a couple of people who are not wearing headsets, so perhaps, or headphones, sorry. Perhaps they can't hear us. So all of that, of course, is time lost, but that's no problem. So last year we were together on stage. It's great to have you here. Thank you for inviting me. Well, thank you for traveling such a long distance. It's great to have you here today, and we're going to talk about software-defined vehicles today. And of course, we're also going, to look at this and other aspects. So pleased to have you here, Jan from Apex AI. It's just so fascinating what you're doing. Perhaps you could just share some comments about you. Now, at Apex AI, we're developing a software development kit for software-defined vehicles. Now, it's a bit like, doing development for an iPhone. So you have a kit which contains all the functions in abstract fashion which you'll need for your development. And it's the same for a software development kit, really. So we develop such tools and libraries for vehicle software. So it's truly exciting. So we're going to hear more, and we're going to dive deep in a moment, but we're really pleased to have you here. So mobility software, it's so important, and I believe, I hope you agree with me that we couldn't imagine a better guest than you. So, Marcus, you really love your job, and I've given one keyword. So, mobility software. As you said, it's the software, and I think what we really have to learn in the OEM industry is that we move away from the focus on hardware to the software-based development. And I have worked, of course, for MHP for a long time software, so I think we have a like mindset, and we share this vision to really help each other to pave the way for the future. Exactly, that is of course the challenge, to really look at the possibilities and challenges that arise ahead of us. And nevertheless, what are these challenges? China, OEMs, we heard it. I believe you all know, and also Shanghai Motors. So perhaps you could comment on that briefly. Everybody's talking about it, of course, but has it really been such a surprise? It feels like that, certainly. And perhaps you could just, tell us what the reality is really like, looking at it with a North American perspective on it. Well, it doesn't come as a surprise, really. And China, they're neither the first, nor are they really in the lead compared to Tesla or Silicon Valley. Tesla, for example, they have the software architecture, and they have the possibilities to update vehicle software over the air for many years, not just since 1 or 2 years, but since 6 or 8 years. And Rivian, the same from Silicon Valley, and the Chinese could do the same now. So it's not really a surprise. Now, it's really quite a challenge, of course, especially. We should put it into perspective. What's surprising is how fast the Chinese competitors have looked at what is there, have looked at the paradigm shift that Tesla has brought about in the automotive industry, and how quickly they learned their lesson. And now they're really already talking at eye level with Tesla. They're not even overtaking them, even. So they've looked at Tesla very intensely. Now suddenly there are two that we have to look at now. So we have to actually move up from the rear, bring up the rear guards, as it were, in order to catch up. So I believe it's really important for us to learn how you actually design a vehicle like this. We had a competitor advantage compared to us. And, and that we were able to do this really on the greenfield side, basically. Now, with a new platform. Now, we had to integrate it all into our own development cycles, 7 years, and that's just such a challenge. It's so much more demanding. And we at Porsche are proud that with Taycan, we've now created a new platform that may not be perfect yet, but which certainly shows the way to the future. Now, we've talked about software development. What other critical components do you see? Is it the semiconductor? No, it's exactly as Marcus has been saying. Basically, there are 3 important factors. Now, if you want to buy a Porsche or a Volkswagen and you want to have the next 911 model or the new Golf model, then you expect to have the same functions you have today, but more than that too. So all those legacy functions have to be part of the next model too, and that makes it so hard to really compete with these greenfield companies, really, because you need to really be aware of everything there is and transfer it. Secondly, in Germany, customers buy from a catalog, and they have 100 options, and they can choose from these hundreds of options. And because of this, you have a lot of complexity in the vehicle. In China or the US, you simply buy packages. For Tesla, now I don't really know Tesla in Germany, but Tesla America, they have 2 or 3 different packages, and that's it. So it's very easily configured. So that is also much easier to build the vehicles because the hardware is always the same of these vehicles. And then it's just a couple of variations that are available too. And that is how you activate your software too. So you start from scratch with a new architecture, new vehicle architecture, and a new software architecture. And that is what makes the game much easier for a new provider, of course. That's exactly what we see from China. And here you can actually see an excerpt. That is the, the software kit that is used, the stack and the sensor kit, which is built into the vehicle. Now, so they really have a fast technology turnover too. And because of this, of course, they have a completely different contribution margin logic across the whole fleet. So, in your opinion, what do you think is the strategy now with regards to the China OEMs? Does it work? Also with regards to partnerships or, chip partners? What's your view of that? Now, chip design is just the one thing. And, of course, they will enter into partnerships much more quickly than we do. Now, some German OEMs now are slowly beginning also to doing that. But apart from the chips, of course, there's also the underlying software and the application software. So on the one hand, you need something that's regulation-driven. So you need a vehicle operating system, and probably you'll need one for the Chinese market, or perhaps even 2 or 3. So a basic ecosystem for the Chinese market, and then one or several ones for the Western countries. And on top of that, but that's more customer-driven, you will need your application ecosystems. It's similar as what we see in the field of telephony today. Exactly. Now, and you just mentioned the legacy and the legacy of a highly emotional automotive brands. Now, so looking at history, is there a difference between IT and vehicle software? And, what is that to do with the whole history of development? Now, there's a big difference because people say, they lump it all together. They say, what do we need to change in IT in order to have, future-proof vehicles? Well, it doesn't work like that. So you have to team up with the right partners, but that doesn't give you a vehicle yet. It doesn't get you software into the vehicle. Software development is just a completely new discipline. It's so different from building a car. There are completely different paradigms. It's completely organized in a different way. Everything's executed in a different way too, and that is why you cannot use the automotive yardstick in this case. And we can see how difficult the automotive OEMs find it to really make headway, given their mindsets with all the legacy they're, bringing to bear. And that is something that the Chinese are really demonstrating to us. They have the new platforms. They've certainly done their homework on batteries, and they've done their homework on semiconductors, and also on software. So they have built their own value chains. This, again, of course, makes them competitors to us. Of course, that doesn't sell vehicles. That's just the homework you need to do. So we need to do the homework too, but, that's still not selling cars. The interior of the car and what will differentiate the vehicles in the future is that when it comes to the customer, the user experience, that we really come up with new ideas. So in Germany, we will have to respond to the things that are important here. In China, you need such things as Alipay and others. And in the United States, you'll need to offer Google in the car. So you have to customize your vehicle to local needs. You need to adapt it accordingly. And only then can we hope to begin to sell cars. So you need to have the right chipsets, right powertrain, right software. That's important. But, that is normally what was in the foreground. And then, customers decided what they're going to buy. Now, people smiled at this. Now, in China, they offered a karaoke set in the vehicle. And, we split ourselves laughing looking at this. For us, what's important is good gaps. You need to have a wonderful, perfect, immaculate surface finish, for example. Why karaoke microphone? But that's what customers want. They want to have a more emotional customer experience, and that is something we need to do. If we develop software in an agile way, so not just, an automotive process, but really if we develop this from scratch, in the future, once we're good at it, we will be able to bring new updates to the car, new avatars, new moods. All of these things will be possible, and that will be a crucial reason why people will buy your car. And you can also have a lot new software-defined vehicles, software-defined applications. Well, something I thought about recently was the dog mode, for example. So that's when you go shopping, your dog's still in the car, and of course the sun is always shining in California, and of course it's going to be hot. So you press a button which activates a mode, so the HVAC will come on, but also passengers, so who will pass by, they will know that there's a dog in the car, and the HVAC is on and the dog is fine. So there's a big display which simply indicates that there's a dog, we're in dog mode, the dog is fine, don't worry. So because, people might be tempted, of course, to bash the window in. Now, Tesla can do this. They develop such a thing and can bring it to the car within just 1 or 2 weeks because they have a central computer. They've got the whole software. It's all in a single repository. So it's not just the central, computer, but also the software for the HVAC, for the display, and also for the computer which runs the function. And you need to have all the components there. If you compare this with the supply chain of German OEMs, Porsche, Volkswagen, not for a single car they produce today do they offer all the software from on their own. It's suppliers who develop it. It's then put into the ECUs. You can't update them. Some OEMs, can't change it that easily. So if you want to change something, you need to do a change request, go through the supplier. This would then be negotiated, would then be developed, then it comes back, then it needs to be integrated. So you're talking a year or so. A Tesla and others, they can do it within just 2 weeks, and that's the big difference. And that is precisely, what customers will see. Because you don't really need to explain to your customer how the architecture works in the background. What they want to know is, how do I get the apps? So how can I integrate them seamlessly into the car, really? And also the willingness to swap, if it's such a seamless experience, and if what you know from the smartphone from other areas, if you have the same experience in the car, that's great. One other aspect on this topic, and Jan just mentioned it. In a premium vehicle of a traditional OEM, I'm not going to drop names though, because it's the same for all of them, in the old architecture had up to 150 ECUs, electronic control units with their own softwares. So 150 suppliers who program software which was then put onto the chip and then, delivered along with the car. Now, of course, everybody depends on everybody. It's such a complex system. So if somebody makes a change, you need to make a test that it still works together with all the other systems. And if you need to interact with another supplier because a fault crops up, you will then have to test it again. So you're talking about endless cycles, and they're just incredibly laborious, so much time and energy. If you had one repository, if you really do agile development, hard and software development, if you decouple them from one another, you stand to save so much cost, billions compared to what we spend today. we could increase the speed, and you need less people for this. You don't really need so many people. I think this is a fallacy that you really need so many, engineers. If you do it right, and that is what you're teaching in Stanford, I think we would actually achieve so much more with smaller teams. Now, there are a couple of enablers for this. Firstly, you need to have your central computer, of course. But Chinese OEMs and others, they've had this for a long time already. In Germany, perhaps most OEMs will have it between 2025 and 2030. Then you need consistent basic software for this central computer, and you will also need some easy use, less than in the past. That's something that we offer, by the way. And then you need all the application software too running on that central computer, and you need to have that in-house and the source code. You don't have to develop it all on your own, but you have to have access to the source code. If you have that, you'll be able to respond to the changing requirements from your community. And, to put this in practice, validate it all. And that is a strong trend we see. So we look at how Chinese process the market, European markets. NIO, for example. Now, they've set up their NIO hub and their NIO houses. And they are claiming that you have an app, an overall system. So the vehicle is just part of the journey, The way they create loyal customers, is not just, of course, through the lease contracts and others, but it's all integrated, really. So devs are brought together with the community. But what you'll also need is the speed, of course, in order to implement all this. Now, and one more thing. If we look into our workshop here, what tools does it take? Just name us the top three. The top three, okay, you need the software developers, and you need to have them in-house. I said it earlier, the whole value add happened at the supplier. They don't have to, all of them, to go to the OEM, but most of them. And then you need to have a very strong software hub integration. That doesn't mean that it has to be sourced together, but at least it has to be a good match. And there's still a bit misunderstanding out there as to how digital ecosystems really work at the OEMs. There are not going to be 10 ecosystems for the same topic. That's not how it works. 10 years ago, you had different smartphone operating systems, 10 or so in the past. Today, you only have 2 in China. So you have to work with the ecosystems. You shouldn't try to create your own. What's your top capability, then? Well, I believe it actually takes 4 things. That's what I like to say. One thing is decoupling hard and software development. So that is something we really need to succeed at as OEMs. The second thing is the repository. Now, this could be based on white label software. It doesn't do any harm because it's crucial for the customers. So it saves time for us. And the third thing is development teams that are close to the needs of the market. So we need to be close to the market in order to implement all this and to really showcase the new benefits and advantages to the customers. I believe that is what we need to do. That's the transformation ahead of us. At the moment, we are the hunters, really. Of course, and chasing after the others in the lead. But it's a challenge we happily embrace together with you. That would be great. So, because you really represent a voice of reason, and you're such an important beacon for us. So, together with you, trying to really nudge our customers onto the right path. I can only recommend go to the NIO house. Just spend an hour there and look at how it all works. And when you can see the small toddlers, moving in there, and when they get to know the avatar, know me, it's emotional. Well, we laugh at it, but the kids love it, and that will already, make it so difficult, actually, for the father not to decide to buy a NIO. So, what's your positive message for the future? It's not too late, but representing a German OEM, I should give up on the hope of being able to do everything ourselves. White label software does work. You basic software. You shouldn't try to own that. You should own an application, and at that level, that is where the value is created for the customer, not at the basic software layer. Thank you. Really enjoyed that. So thank you for traveling such a long distance to be here. Now, finally, because now you're really, hopping between different continents, so we really appreciate you coming here. Thank you very much for chairing this. And thank you very much, dear audience, for listening.